Greetings, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where in the world you're joining us from. Thank you for joining us. I'm Julia Upton. I'm Associate Professor of Mathematics and Data Analytics at Husson University, and IEEE Maine Section Chair and IEEE Maine Joint Communications and Computer Societies Chapter Chair. This webinar is the second this fall in the series of AI webinars. It's co-hosted by Maine AI and IEEE Maine Joint Communications and Computer Societies Chapter. It is sponsored by Maine Office of Vice President for Research. And I would like to thank IEEE Region 1, IEEE USA, and our colleagues at IEEE China and India for broadcasting this event. Our first speaker, Dr. Nancy Mead, unfortunately couldn't be with us today for personal reasons. So today we'll focus on one of the hottest AI-related topics today, and that's trustworthy online social media. I'm sure every one of you purchased a product online. So how much can you trust those online reviews? Fake news versus real news on social media. Can AI help us distinguish between those? So our speaker, Dr. Yuhong Liu, will shed light on these issues. Dr. Yuhong Liu is an associate professor at Department of Computer Science and Engineering, Santa Clara University. She received her PhD from University of Rhode Island in 2012. Her research interests include trustworthy computing and cybersecurity of emerging applications such as online social media, Internet of Things, and blockchain. She is currently serving as an IEEE Computer Society Distinguished Visitor, Associate Editor of IPSIPA, Transactions on Signal and Information Processing, and an IPSIPA Distinguished Lecturer. If you have any questions, please type them in the Q&A. We expect to have a lively Q&A session after the presentation. So please don't hesitate to type in your questions. And after the presentation, I will address those questions to our speaker. Dr. Liu, it's a pleasure to have you. Welcome, and the floor is yours.
Thank you, Julia, for this nice introduction. So please allow me to share my screen, then we can get started. Okay, can you see my slides?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. First of all, thank you everyone for attending this seminar, and it's my great pleasure to participate in this Maine AI webinar series. So today, my talk will be mainly focusing on the human factors in the trust-based attacks and defense in online social networks. Okay, let me do this. Okay, so a brief introduction about my overall research is centered around the trustworthy computing concept, and I do apply the trust models and theory in different application domains, including online social media, IoT, and blockchain. And today's talk will mainly focus on this online social network. Okay, so we know that online social media is really getting very, very popular, especially among those younger generations. We can go online every day, for example, just check the news happened today, and we can also watch online videos. Then we can like it, we can comment on them, we can also share them with our friends, family members, and even our colleagues at work. So we can do a lot of things online in online social media. And on the right-hand side, you probably see a survey result. It shows the top 10 most popular mobile apps that people spend most of their time every day. And you can see on that list, a lot of them, those apps are actually social media apps. So you can see how much time we spend on those online social media every day. And of course, those most popular social media websites, they have a huge statistic about how many active users they have every day or every month. And with that being said, it's a great stuff. However, there are also some challenges. One of them is the and trustworthy user-generated contents. So from this photo, you can see it's actually two photos taken for the same person, William, Prince of Wales, at even the same event, but from different angles. From those two different photos, we probably can tell the story in very different ways. And that's the dangers of one-sided story. Well, actually, there are also many misinformation purposely distributed in the online social media. For example, soon after the war between Ukraine and Russia started, and there's tons of fake news propagated in online social media. And this is one example. It's a deep fake video of the President Zelensky calling his soldiers to surrender. Of course, it's a fake video. But you can see it got propagated in online social media very broadly. So with that being said, Andres, who is a political cyber hacker, successfully manipulated the election results in South American countries for over 8 years through the propagation of misinformation in online social media, said this: when I realized that people believe what the internet says more than reality, I discovered that I had the power to make people believe almost anything. So that is very dangerous. Well, then it actually comes to the problem. Can we actually trust the contents in online social media? And if so, how? Well, there are different research efforts or different efforts from even industry and practitioners to try to address the problem. For today, we mainly talk about two majors or two popular solutions. And one is the friendship-based online social network. For example, like Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, where we might make connections with other family members or colleagues, so that we may trust better about the contents that they share. So basically people who we know. Another platform is actually the online reputation system. For example, like Amazon, eBay, or TripAdvisor. When you try to purchase something online or book something online, you may not know the vendor or the products well, but you can refer others' opinion or their experiences to make your own decision. So that's another way where we can actually trust strangers. So for today's talk, we will have some example projects from those two different platforms. And in this online social media, trustworthy computing problem, it has many challenges. But one of the unique challenge is about the involvement of human factor. So we know that as computer scientists or mathematicians, we probably are familiar with dealing with those rules or machines, computers, which are objective and often follows the rules all the time. But as human beings, we may not always do that. We may have our own opinions, which can be very subjective, and our behaviors could be complex. So sometimes we follow the rules, but sometimes we may be under peer pressure or some other things. So we may change our behavior, or not to mention there could be cultural or religious differences. So everyone is unique. And because of that, it makes our overall behavior much harder to be predicted. So because of that, we do face many challenges, but the human factor sometimes could also help us protect the information trustworthiness. So today we'll mainly focus on this aspect. And in particular, we may have 2 to 3 projects, depending on the time, to actually go through how human factors play a role in the attacks and defense in those reputation systems and online social networks. So first, I'd like to start with the online reputation system. There are tons of studies showing that how significant those online reputation systems are. For example, 79% of the online shoppers says that they trust the online reviews as much as the personal recommendations. And also for the product pages with and without those online reviews, they can have a very huge difference in terms of the product sales. So because of that, it gives the malicious users or attackers a motivation to actually manipulate those ratings and reviews. So here's one example. this movie, Resident Evil Afterlife, right after its release on IMDb, which is a famous web like a movie rating website, and the rating score was like 8.5 out of 10, which was pretty high. But after a month, right after the promotion period, you can see the rating score dropped suddenly down to 5.9. So there's a high chance that some manipulations may be going on. They try to promote the sales of the movie. Well, today, if you just Google online, say, for example, improve or increase your YouTube views, you probably can find quite a few different companies providing even like fake rating services to the YouTubers or to promote your video with very cheap price, with like $10 or like less than $100, you can get quite a huge amount of views or people comments and likes. So this becomes a severe problem in practice. Then, of course, there are different research efforts trying to address the issue. And here we mentioned one example defense by doing the temporal and user correlation analysis. So what we do is first we model the behavior of the real user and the potential malicious attacker. As you can see on top is a regular user. What will they do? They basically one real human user will just control one user ID. And he or she will use the user ID to provide honest ratings to different items online. But for the attacker, it's different. In order to generate higher influence, one attacker needs to control multiple user IDs, which are malicious, and they need to coordinate those malicious user IDs to provide dishonest ratings to the target item, either promote the rating score or reputation, or downgrade the rating or reputation for their like competitors' products. So that's roughly the difference. And then there are different defense mechanisms proposed. Roughly, we can separate them into three categories. The first one is typically like offline solutions. For example, the platforms could consider like increasing the registration fee, or like you ask for unique IP addresses for different accounts. So this way, it actually increases the cost of the attacker. Well, this method can be done like through policy or rules. So it can be done typically offline, and it can generally be compatible with other solutions that we will introduce later. So the other two categories, which are more like through algorithms or machine learning or different methods. So one of those categories is like doing the analysis about the rating values or potentially reviews. So for this type of study, what they will do is they may perform, for example, statistical analysis on the rating values and see the distribution of the ratings, trying to identify the outliers. And the machine learning algorithms can also be applied in this domain. But back then, when this work was generated, there's not much work that trying to actually consider the ratings based on the time when they were provided, which is what we mean by the time domain information that was often ignored. And this is the second category of studies. Then the last category is to focus on the user account behavior analysis, which we call evaluate the user's trust value. And for that type of study, typically, they will focus on each individual user behavior. For example, if the user is like Amazon top reviewer, or if that comment was made as like a certified purchase, then that probably will review or rating probably will receive higher weights or is more trustworthy compared with a random review or rating. But probably you can see in our model, we see those malicious user accounts controlled by the same attacker will probably be highly coordinated. And that relationship among different user accounts were seldom analyzed in the existing study when this work was done. So based on that, we actually trying to propose a solution by combining those two gaps. So here's what we did. Basically, it's a two-step analysis. The first step, for each specific we call target item, we will arrange the ratings to that particular item according to the time they were provided. So basically, it's a time sequence. And we do the temporal analysis, trying to identify the time period where malicious ratings occur. As you can see, malicious attackers, if they want to generate the influence, they tend to provide their dishonest ratings during like a short time period so that they can significantly change the rating or review scores. So that's the first step, temporal analysis. And then we also identify that, well, actually the users who provide ratings during that suspicious time interval, we consider as suspicious user. But normal users, they don't know that. They can also provide their ratings during that time period. So which needs the second step. We need to do further analysis about the user behavior so that we can actually filter out those normal users and only identify the malicious user group. So that's the rough logic about this work. And without talking about too much detail, I want to just briefly show what we have for what we did for the first and the second step. The first step, you can see two subplots. The upper one is really the time sequence of the ratings. We have the blue ones represent the normal rating, and the red ones represent the dishonest rating. And you can see the attackers provide those red ratings or dishonest ratings during certain time interval. Then the lower plot, without talking about how we get the curve, is actually the changing detection curve, which is using a statistic or signal processing way. And you can see once the curve goes up, then that means something's wrong. So based on how the curve changes, we are able to identify 3 intervals. It's very accurate. So we can include most of those dishonest ratings during those identified time interval. But as you can see, we also involve, some of the intervals involve the blue ratings, which are normal ratings. So that's why the second step, we try to only focus on the specific time interval and analyze whether a particular user is normal user or malicious user. So the rationale behind this user similarity analysis is that for normal users, we tend to be diverse. We have different interests, we like different products, and even for the same products, we may have different opinions. So it's not that, well, the chance that for 2 users to always provide ratings reviews for similar items at all the time is very low. But for coordinated malicious user accounts, that could be very high because the attacker is trying to achieve the maximum effect based on how the malicious user account behave. So they tend to be very similar. So because of that, we actually need to do the user similarity analysis. In this work, we involve the Euclidean distance, but actually this can be generally changed to any other user correlation analysis replaced by those methods. Then based on step 1 and step 2, we actually get these results. You can see by comparing that with the related work, our methods can highly increase the detection rate while reduce the false alarm rate significantly. So that's roughly what we did for the first one. And this is from the defense perspective. And next one, let's see what the attackers can do. So we want to show one example attack. We call it iterative rating attack. Before we talk about our methods, let's see what existing attacks were doing. Most of the existing studies, they actually have an underlying assumption that higher rating values or higher rating volume actually will mean higher product sales. So that's why the attack strategy is always trying to boost the rating score for their own products, for example, or downgrade the rating of their competitor's product. However, is this assumption true? We actually did a study in this work, and we found it may not be true all the time. And also another aspect is that people always focus on how many malicious ratings or dishonest ratings they have in total. For example, I have 100. I could use my controlled accounts to provide 100 dishonest ratings or 200 or 300. And then they, based on that, trying to, provide the ratings in a way to maximize their outcome. But actually, they often ignore the internal feedback from the market, which actually is determined by the human factor. So by identifying those two aspects, we come out with the idea, can we propose an advanced attack by tracking those aspects? So the first step, we are trying to identify different factors that may influence the product sales. It's no longer just the outcome as the rating value change. It's now connecting with the product sales. And we actually identify quite a few different factors like rating value, rating volume. But in this talk, I want to mainly focus on two aspects like highlighted in the blue color. One of them is so-called the network effect. Basically, that means if a product or an atom already getting like a greater user base, then it has a higher chance to attract more users to purchase. So that would lead to higher download or sales of the product. The other one is so-called the herding effect. Basically, the studies found that online consumers tend to follow others' purchase. So that means if there's a trending atom, which start to getting very popular recently, then people tend to follow others' decision and they want to buy it and try it. So because of those two things, we actually find a very interesting observation. Okay, so then once after we identify the influential factors, the next step, we want to build up the model. What we used was the Quantile regression model. On the equation, in the equation on the left-hand side, which it represents the sales or product downloads. And on the right-hand side, we actually model each specific influential factor that we are interested in. And in front of each influential factor, we actually have a coefficient. So our job is to feed in real data so that we can learn the coefficients. And then we can actually learn the impact of each specific influential factor. What we did was we collected real data for training. And we collect the data from CNET, which is also user review and rating based websites for software sales. And we feed the data and we learn the coefficients. Then actually, we next step is to trying to change some of the influential factors and see how that will influence the downloads or product sales. Here, we find one very interesting observation. So you can see we actually use one specific product as an example. I named the product here just to show you that it's a real one. It's not like we just generated a random one. But actually, the same observation can be made on many different products, not only this one. So I will just use this one as example. You can see originally the product was ranked as number 47 in the market. And then what we did was we changed its rating value and the volume slightly. Basically, that can be considered as manipulations. And we only do that in the first week. So you can see as a result, the rank was going up to 42 in the second week. Then actually what we did is we stopped manipulation. We don't do anything to the product anymore. But surprisingly, in the next following weeks, you can see in about next 10 weeks, we can see a continuous improvement of the product rank. And eventually it stops at rank 28, which was much higher rank than the initial manipulation result. So that was surprising. And we figure out the reason is because of the so-called network effect and herding effect. That's humans' reaction. So when this product start to get a higher rank and it becomes more visible, and people see this as a trending product getting more and more sales, so they tend to follow others' decision and they will purchase that and try. And then if the product accumulates more and more user bases, the sales will also go up. So because of that, we can actually see the continuous climbing up of the rank. We call this the market's internal self-exciting power. And then the next step is, can we actually take advantage of this to propose an advanced attack? Here's what we did. Of course, this work involves other manipulation strategy, but I want to just focus on this. So you can see, we say most of the existing attacks, they will just consider, for example, I have 100 dishonest ratings. I will just provide them all. But our strategy says, how about we take advantage of the self-excitation power? We actually separate our dishonest ratings. So first round, we actually provide part of it. And then so the product actually gets the initial momentum to climbing up the rank. And then we stop our manipulation, see how far it can go until it goes to a rank that it stays there, cannot continue going up. Then we provide the second group of unfair rating. And we repeat the process in an iterative way. So in that way, we want to see if our attack can actually become more powerful. Basically, it should be the combination of our manipulation power and also the market's internal feedback. And actually, we did like a study experiments, and you can see we actually consider different scenarios where the attacker has only 10 dishonest ratings, 20, 50, or 200 become like more powerful. And for each of the scenario, we compare our proposed strategy and with the other, we call it altogether strategy. Basically means whatever I have, I will just put them together. So you can see the black spots there in the graph. And for each of the scenario, we do have quite a few products that will benefit more from our proposed attack. So that's our results roughly. Okay, so those are two projects already. Hopefully you are still with me. And the next one, we want to briefly talk about the detection of the misinformation in the online social network. So actually, this is closely connected with AI, machine learning, and there are different angles to handle the problem. I roughly put them into three categories. One of them is focusing on the content analysis. So for example, if there's a particular tweet, natural language processing, NLP techniques could be directly applied on the post itself, or sometimes people can actually group different posts together and see the common narrative if they share the common narrative. So that's the content level. Well, another aspect is from the context. For example, the same idea, kind of like malicious attackers may launch their attack during a specific time duration or at a specific geographic location. So they will just analyze the time and the location of the author who generate the post or the users who retweet or liked those post tweets online. Those are the two aspects. And the third one is actually based on the propagation pattern. For example, who was involved in the propagation and how will the propagation, for example, from 10 likes to 200 likes to 2,000 likes or to 2 million likes, how is that change? So I will my study particularly focuses on the propagation patterns. Can we differentiate that from for the real news and the fake news? Actually, the answer is yes. Existing studies already found the propagation patterns for the real news and the fake news are quite different. Here is one paper, and they actually discovered that on different social media platforms like Xinlang Weibo, which is based on in China, and also Twitter, you can see this subplot B. It shows the propagation pattern of fake news on Weibo, and subplot C shows the propagation pattern of the real news. So you can see, compare those two on the same platform, they are quite different. For the fake news, it tends to have multiple hubs of user engagement. But for the real news, typically it just has like one hub or two hubs, three hubs, very few number of hubs. That means it won't propagate too long. Then for the lower two subplots, you can see the patterns for Twitter. the fake one and the real one, they also look very different. So people do want to make efforts from these aspects. Actually, that different pattern is caused by different factors. One important factor is what we call the human dynamics. So as human beings, our behavior patterns are quite different. The upper plot is like a regular Poisson process. So you can see simulated based on the Poisson process, the events like shown, event happening time is shown in subplot A. And you can see the inter-event time, basically the blank space is roughly, you know, how to say this? There will not be a super long time period with no events at all. But if you check the lower plot, which is simulating the human dynamic, you can see there's a huge gap. We call it a long delay that between two consecutive events. So that could happen a lot. Basically, that's what we call the long tail human dynamics. And because of this, in terms of propagation, you probably can see the influence in the propagation patterns. And imagine if the social bots, they want to promote a topic, they won't involve such long tail behavior. They probably will try to, you know, reshare it or propagate it faster. So that makes a huge difference. Then those are some general stuff. So at the end, I would like to briefly talk about one ongoing project happening in our university. It's named Alleviating Misinformation, particularly for Chinese Americans. And the goal of this project is to build a repository about the Chinese language-based disinfo and misinfo. And also on top of that, we aim to develop a group of automatic tools or semi-automatic tools to detect misinformation in early stage for the Chinese language-based. So I want to talk about like a brief background about the Chinese American community. From the social background, you can see the Chinese American is one of the fastest growing racial and ethnic group in the US. Then the problem is a majority of them are like naturalized citizens, and many of whom, especially the first generation, they tend to still refer to the Chinese forums to actually share and discuss news. They may not first time check the English-based forums or news websites. And that may generate some gaps for them to actually capture the truthful info or be able to differentiate fake news. From the political background, it's a complex story. There are different efforts. There are pro-China and also anti-China efforts, both happening at the same time. So it may cause some conflicts in this political aspect. Then from the technical background, most of the current studies, they are focusing on the English-based language. But for Chinese, it's a different language. So the rules could be very different. So it's cross-language. And also the culture is very different. Then the users' engagement patterns could also be very different. So because of that, there is a need to actually study the Chinese language-based misinfo and disinfo and protect our Chinese American community. So what we proposed in this study is existing works, they mainly focus on the English contents and they mainly involve just NLP, natural language processing, less on the propagation pattern. So what we propose is to focus first on the misinfo in the Chinese language and construct a large sample of the social media contents. And then next step, we try to develop those automated or semi-automated detection tools, which is developed based on both NLP and propagation patterns. So this is a collaboration project. We do have experts from the NLP field. And that's roughly this ongoing project. And because of the time, I can just stop here. And at the end, I want to make several conclusions about my talk. First of all, the online social network or online social media is facing various security challenges. And the studies on the human factor aspect are very important. And that makes a huge difference. And finally, it is a battleground. The fast evolving arms races between the attacks and defense do require our continuous studies in this field. So that's all for my talk. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Dr. Liu. So if you have any questions, please feel free to type them into Q&A. We have plenty of time for Q&A, so we'll ask the speaker the questions. So I have a question for the speaker myself. So you mentioned the herding effect in the first part of your talk. That was quite an impact on product ratings, right? Is there a similar effect that's at play in terms of propagation of fake news versus real news? And if there is, have there been any attempts to quantify the herding effect to understand it better?
Yeah, this is a very good question. Actually, although we separate those two different platforms, many of those observations are common. They happen in both platforms. For example, like the herding effect, like people tend to follow the trending things. That happens as well in the fake news field as well. But your question, like whether it has been quantified, I haven't seen any work, study that aspect. I think it's a very interesting angle, but I probably need to do more thorough survey just to make sure that's right.
Oh, thank you very much. Also, in terms of the long tail human dynamics versus the Poisson process. So, so it appears that when you have the long tail human dynamics is starting to look more like a Poisson process when you have those dishonest users, so to speak, right? Do you think there's an explanation for it? Has there been any studies to explain the
you mean why the
rationale? Yeah, the
Okay.
rationale behind the long-term human dynamics in the first place? And secondly, why is it that it starts looking more like a Poisson effect when you have this dishonest users?
Yeah. So first of all, the the early studies, they for simplicity reasons, they often use the Poisson process to model the real human behavior or simulate the real human behavior. That's why we actually have that as at the first place. But actually later studies found that the real human behavior do not exactly follow the Poisson process. For example, real life example, like on Twitter, right? Even if you are an active user, right? You may go on Twitter. Well, some of the users, they watch Twitter like every single hour, that's possible. But many users or your Facebook accounts, for example, you may just suddenly or one day you just go there and share your pictures, your photos, your news, and then you may disappear for a week or several days. Then you come back again, right? So those events we call, or your activities on the online social media platform are highly dynamic. And most of the time you are actually doing nothing, but you may tend to, for recent days, I want to really go online and chat with my friends. I may just do a lot of activities during a short time period. That's actually the rationale or one of the our daily life examples to show why the long tail human behavior happened. Then for the malicious attackers, it's a different story. So here we mainly focus on these attacks. They want to generate an influence. So in order to maximize, typically we assume the malicious attacker, they have a limited budget. They cannot just have a limited number of user accounts and provide a limited number of comments, replies, engagement. So with those limited budgets, what they can do is try to maximize the influence they have in the online social media. Because of that, for example, in other, like there are studies found that at the early stage of a propagation, it's a very important stage. If your post, do not get populated during the early stage, there's a high chance it will never goes up because our like users' attention span is limited. And also for the online news, it has a certain time period like people will pay attention to. So the early stage is very important. And for the malicious attackers, it's their golden stage. They have to utilize that time period, try to propagate the fake news. So that's why, by nature, there should be a difference.
Well, thank you so much. This is indeed a fascinating topic. Okay, I think there is a question in Q&A. Let me see. Yes, there is a question. The question is, are there not occasions where sensational or novel high impact real news communications propagate in a manner similar to the fake news communications?
Yes, it's possible. There's no like clear line say like this pattern for sure will be malicious and this pattern for sure will be real news. That's why actually one of the greatest challenge in the field is like, how do we find the ground truth? Like typically most of current studies, we have to manually label that news, and we have to basically do a person check. Then we can make sure 100% sure, or sometimes even with human being, it's hard to make sure it's 100% correct. But we have to involve those manual inspections. So to the answer to your question is, we may be able to achieve, for example, 80% or 90% accuracy, but it's almost impossible we achieve 100% accuracy.
Mm-hmm. Right. Okay, I just have to ask this question.
Sure.
That early on in your presentation, you showed a picture of Prince William.
Oh, yes.
Two pictures of Prince William. They were both real photos, right? From real event. That was really Prince William. Neither one was photoshopped, right?
Right.
So in a situation like this, now the problem there was, of course, that the first photo gave a distorted picture because it concealed some details of the real picture. Yeah. So do you think it's possible to use AI to distinguish between those cases?
Yes, AI can help. And actually, there are studies for like deep video. The second example I show, like deep learning models are involved heavily in that domain, trying to process images or videos and differentiate the real ones from the fake ones. There are studies, tons of studies on that. It's a hot topic. But again, like high levelly, this is also one of the challenges facing the fake news detection. So it's like sometimes if that's completely made up, right, it's easier to be differentiated. But often the challenging cases is for a particular news, it doesn't have to be multimedia. Even the text-based messages or news, it's not 100% fake. Part of that is based on facts, and part of that is made up. So it's a mixture, and that is highly, how to say this, difficult even for human being, because if you do fact checking, right, part of it is from the reliable sources. If you stop there and just believe all the rest part of it, then yeah, you're gonna make a mistake. So that's why it's a hard competition. We have to carry on.
Yeah, indeed. Yeah. So bottom line is it's harder to distinguish between truth and lie by omission than it is between truth and just a lie, right? So yeah, there's definitely a lot of things yet to be researched and find out. It's a fascinating topic. Thank you so much, Dr. Yu, for your excellent presentation and joining us today.
Thank you so much
Oh,
for
well,
having
hold on. I think there is another question. Oh, thank you. Another thank you for a great presentation for you from one of the members of our audience. So, and thank you everybody for joining us today. Any other questions? Well, we hope to see you at our next webinar in the series, which will be on the first Thursday of next month. This is November 3rd at the same time. You'll get more information about it as we get closer to that date. Again, thank you very much. Thank you, Dr. Yu. Excellent presentation.
Thank you. Feel free to contact me even offline.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.